They said her touch brings death. Every child in the Blackwood Empire grew up hearing her name like a warning. Don't go near the cursed Omega. Don't let her skin touch yours. She rots everything she loves. For 6 years, Sela believed them. She stopped touching people. She stopped touching animals. She covered her skin in charcoal and moved through the world like a ghost, careful, quiet, and completely alone. Then one morning she found a body at the bottom of a ravine, a big man, shirtless, black veins spreading across his chest like cracks in dying earth, still breathing, barely. She could smell the poison in him from 30 feet away. Whoever he was, he had maybe hours left. She reached out to close his eyes. The moment her fingers touched his skin, the ground shattered. A shockwave of black and gold energy exploded outward, splitting rock, throwing her 10 feet backward, and the dying man gasped, not because her touch was killing him, because it was the only thing keeping him alive. What Sela didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the man lying in that ravine was Valerius, the AlphaKing of the Blackwood Empire, the most powerful wolf alive. The man who personally designed the law that sent her here to die. And what he didn't know was that the woman he would have banished without a second thought was the only person in the world who could save him. If you want to know what happens when the most powerful man in the Empire is completely helpless and the woman he condemned is his only hope, stay right here. This story will destroy you in the best way possible. Let's go. Valerius had never lost, not a battle, not a negotiation, not a single fight since he was 16 years old and took the throne from a king who thought a boy couldn't bleed him dry. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. His armies had just conquered the Ashvale territories, the last piece of land standing between Blackwood and total dominance of the region. The feast hall was full. His generals were loud and happy. His council raised their goblets and called him a god. He almost believed them. But 10 minutes before the feast, something small happened. A tiny Omega child, maybe 8 years old, was caught stealing bread from the kitchen. The penalty was immediate banishment. Everyone waited to see what the king would do. Valerius looked at the child for a long moment. Then he handed over the whole loaf and told the kitchen staff he saw nothing. He didn't know why he did it. He didn't examine it. He walked into the feast. The council toasted him. The wine was poured. Valerius noticed one thing. The guard pouring his goblet would not look him in the eye. A guard who had served him for 4 years. A guard who had never once looked at the floor. Valerius picked up the goblet. The first symptom wasn't pain. It was silence. His wolf, the golden, powerful animal that had lived inside him since birth, went completely quiet, like a fire suddenly smothered under glass. He was on his feet before he understood what was happening. His legs disappeared beneath him. He hit the floor of his own feast hall and looked up at 7 council members who did not move to help him. 7 men holding their goblets, 7 men who had been waiting for this exact moment. The last thing he saw clearly was Kalen, his most trusted advisor, calmly refilling his wine. They wrapped him in a funeral shroud while he was still conscious. They announced his heroic death to a weeping court. Then they drove him to the valley's edge and rolled him in. He landed at the bottom of the ravine that he built, designed to be a grave. His grave now. Above him, his own banner snapping in the wind. Below him, darkness, poison, and the sound of the Empire celebrating his death. Sela heard the crash in the night. She thought it was an animal, something large falling from the ridge. She went to check at dawn because the valley was her responsibility now. Not by choice, by survival. When you live somewhere long enough, you start caring what dies in it. She smelled the poison before she saw him. Eclipse gall, burned copper and ice, a smell that should not exist and therefore was impossible to mistake. She had never smelled it on a living person. She circled the body slowly. Big man, long dark hair, black veins branching across his chest like roots growing in the wrong direction. Still breathing, but barely. She knew what Eclipse Gall did. There was no antidote. He was going to die. The only kindness left was to close his eyes before he did. She reached out. Her fingers brushed his cheek. The world exploded. A shockwave cracked the ground in every direction. She was thrown backward into solid rock. He seized violently on the ground, and then, somehow, it stabilized. A cord pulled tight between her chest and his, vibrating at a frequency she felt in her bones. The poison was inside her now, moving through her arm in dark, branching lines. She sat up. She looked at him. He was conscious, eyes open, looking at her with an expression she had seen 1,000 times on faces from Blackwood, the flicker of recognition, the instinctive disgust. His first word was not help. His first word was don't. She heard it. She understood exactly what it meant. She helped him anyway, not because the bond was forcing her, because he was dying, and she was not the Empire. And she had decided a long time ago she would not become the thing that hurt her. She got him to her cave. She built the fire. She sat across from him and waited. "You should not have touched me," he said. "You were dying," she said. "You are an Omega. You couldn't do anything. That's why I'm still here." He had no answer. It was the first time in 20 years he had nothing to say. Sela explained it simply. Her body could absorb his poison, but not all at once. 20% of his total venom load every 48 hours. That was the ceiling. Exceed it, and her organs would begin shutting down. There was no shortcut. There was no faster way. He had approximately 6 days before the Eclipse Gall fractured his wolf bond permanently. The math barely worked. Valerius listened to all of this and immediately began treating it like a logistics problem. "So if we pace the absorption over the next 5 days, accounting for—" "I am not a supply chain," Sela said. He stopped. "I am a person, with a system that will fail if you treat it like a resource. You can cooperate or you can die. The choice is genuinely yours." The silence that followed was the longest he had ever been quiet. That night he couldn't sleep. He watched her arms in the dying firelight, the dark lines branching slowly even while she slept, her body processing his poison without rest or choice. He watched those lines move toward her wrist for a long time. Then he carefully, quietly moved his arm away from hers. More distance meant less passive absorption, less load on her system overnight. He wasn't sure it would help. It seemed logical. He did it in complete silence with no audience and told himself it was just strategy. He told himself that for a while. Sela woke in the morning and noticed the distance between them. She said nothing, but the dark lines had not progressed as far as they should have. She looked at the sleeping king and did not yet understand what she was seeing. The bond between them felt a half-degree warmer. Just half. Just enough to notice. Valerius needed 3 things: fighters, intelligence, and a way into Blackwood. Everything he needed existed in the valley. None of it would be given to him based on rank. Sela told him plainly before they went, "These people were thrown away by the empire you built. You have no authority here. You have nothing here. If you want their help, you ask for it. Actually ask." He had never asked for anything in his life. First was Bryn, one-armed, bone-carving, furious. She didn't stand when they entered, didn't stop sharpening her blade. Her opening line to the AlphaKing of Blackwood: "You purged me for losing an arm winning your border war. What exactly are you offering me for helping you win this one?" Valerius had no ready answer. He told her the truth. He was wrong. She stared at him, went back to sharpening. "I'll think about it." It was the best response he had received in 3 days. Second was Colt, 16 years old, severe stutter, crouched over a flat rock covered in the most detailed tactical map Valerius had ever seen, drawn from memory, updated daily. When Valerius leaned in, impressed, Colt waved his hand away. Don't smudge the Eastern patrol lines." The stutter disappeared completely when he explained the patrol rotation. He was the best tactical analyst in the room. He was also a child the Empire had thrown away at 14. Third was Mira, Elder Omega, former midwife, the woman who dug the tunnels with her bare hands over 15 years. She poured them tea. She listened to Valerius's entire plan without interrupting. Then she said, "Before I give you anything, the first law you write when you take that throne will be the full abolition of the Purge, not a reform, an abolition. Do you agree?" Valerius agreed. He meant it. That surprised him most. Walking back, Sela said quietly, "You said please to Bryn. I heard you." He didn't answer. She said, "You've never said please to anyone in your life. I have you." Still no answer, but that night, for the first time, she didn't pull her hand away when their fingers came close. They're building something in that valley, not just an army, something neither of them has a word for yet. Keep watching. Chapter 5 is where the king learns his claws were never his greatest weapon. The plan was simple. Intercept the High Council's supply caravan, take their weapons, slow the Purge timeline, and test whether a group of banished wolves could actually function as a unit. Valerius would fight as a human. No wolf, no dominance, just his mind. It was the most vulnerable he had been since the ravine. Colt designed the ambush through terrain control, no brute force, pure geography. Valerius directed Bryn with short, precise instructions. She executed them with brutal efficiency. They were, against all logic, a good team. Then Colt miscalculated a guard's timing. A fully shifted wolf broke from the rear of the caravan, fast, heading straight for the boy. Valerius was closer. He didn't calculate. He didn't think about rank or strategy or what an AlphaKing should do. He moved. He took the blow across his shoulder and went down hard. Colt's stutter vanished entirely. He called the rear guard position in a flat, commanding voice, and the ambush completed in 30 seconds without another mistake. Valerius stood up, shoulder torn, said nothing about it. Later that night, Sela dressed the wound in silence. Her hands stayed on his shoulder slightly longer than they needed to. She said nothing. But that night, for the first time, she did not pull her fingers away when their hands came close. Among the seized supplies, a sealed council document. Mira read it aloud. The Great Cleansing had been moved forward. It began in 11 days, not 20. They had less time than they thought. Sela's absorption ceiling had not changed. The math did not work unless something changed. The combat had spiked Valerius's toxin load past the safe cycle ceiling. Sela's body compensated automatically. The bond didn't ask permission. She woke the morning after the raid with the dark lines past her elbows and climbing. She hid it. She kept moving. She managed camp, cataloged supplies, helped Mira map the tunnel entry points. She collapsed in the afternoon while carrying water. Valerius felt it 30 seconds before it happened, a phantom fist squeezing his chest. He was there when she hit the ground. She was burning with fever. The eclipse gall in her system had crossed her neutralization limit, and her body was turning it against itself. The only way to slow it was for Valerius to stop reaching for his wolf entirely. Every time he reached for the shift, even unconsciously, it generated a toxin surge the bond sent directly into her. He had to stay human, completely, voluntarily, totally human, for 40 hours. His wolf had been the foundation of his identity since he was 4 years old. Suppressing it was not like choosing to be still. It was like holding his own heartbeat down by force. He stayed awake. He didn't explain to anyone what he was doing or why. Bryn watched from the cave entrance and said nothing. On hour 32, she brought him water without being asked. So on hour 38, she sat beside him, still silent, just present. When Sela's fever broke at hour 40, Bryn looked at the hollowed-out, shaking king and said quietly, "She's going to ask what you did." "I know," he said. "Don't tell her," he said. Bryn said nothing, but she didn't argue. Sela woke. The lines had retreated. She asked what happened. He told her the fever broke on its own. She looked at his face, the shadows under his eyes, the stillness in his hands, and she knew he was lying. She didn't push, but something in her expression changed. The bond stopped feeling like a hook. It started feeling like a hand. They entered through the Omega tunnels on the night the purge began. 12 Valley fighters, Valerius, Sela, Bryn, Colt, Mira, moving in complete silence. Colt had given them a 4-hour window between patrol rotations, not a minute more. Mira moved through the tunnels without a light. She had walked this dark so many times she knew every turn by memory. The walls were covered in names, scratched into the stone. Every Omega, every purged wolf, every person declared unworthy and sent here to disappear. Mira had carved the first ones herself. Others added theirs over 15 years. Some of the letters were tiny. Children's hands. Valerius ran his fingers along the wall, the entire length of the passage, nearly a quarter-mile of names. He did not speak. He did not stop. No one said anything to him about it. No one needed to. When they came up into the city, they could already hear the purge in progress. Not screaming, organized sound, announcements, orders. The shuffle of people being sorted. Kalen had been efficient. Valerius stood at the tunnel exit and listened. Then, Colt, Roots. Colt had them memorized. They moved. The plan split them into 2 groups, Bryn and the Valley fighters to the lower city, create chaos, pull Kalen's forces away from the citadel. Valerius, Sela, Colt, and Mira to the throne room. The plan had one critical flaw. It required Sela to use her absorption as a weapon for the first time, not to save Valerius, to poison Kalen's guards. "Can you do it?" Valerius asked, genuinely asking, not commanding. She thought about it, the real answer, not the brave one. "Yes, but after, I'm going to need you to catch me." He met her eyes. "I will." First promise he had ever made from certainty rather than strength. Sela cleared the path. 3 sets of guards, poisoned blades. She absorbed the venom through contact and held it inside her until they reached the antechamber. Then she released it in a controlled exhale into the air around Kalen's elite force. They went down in under a minute. She did not collapse, but the dark lines reached her throat. One absorption event remained before her system shut down. 1. Valerius watched it happen and memorized the exact shape of those lines. He would carry them the rest of his life. Kalen did not run when they entered the throne room. He sat in Valerius's throne and looked genuinely unsurprised. "I wondered if you'd make it," he said. What followed was not immediately a fight. It was a conversation. Kalen made his case for the great cleansing with the calm of a man who had been building this argument for 15 years. Every weak link in the pack contributed to its downfall. Every sick wolf carried risk. His own mate had died from a plague carried by an Omega who lied to avoid banishment. He was not a monster. He was a grieving man who turned his grief into law. The argument was coherent. Valerius recognized every single word of it, because he had made them himself, in different words from that same throne, for 20 years. He stood in the throne room and had nothing to say, not because Kalen was right, because Valerius had not yet fully earned the right to say he was wrong. Then Sela, standing quietly behind him, rested 2 fingers against the back of his hand. That was all. Kalen drew his weapon. So the fight was close. Valerius without his wolf, Kalen at full power. Valerius took 2 bad wounds. Then Sela did the thing she promised. She absorbed the remainder of his Eclipse Gall in one draw. Everything left, past her limit, all at once. It almost killed her. But Valerius felt his wolf stir, not fully restored, not powerful, just present. A fire coming back from ash. He shifted for the first time since the feast, not in rage, not in triumph, in grief. He ended it in seconds. He turned back. Sela was on the ground. He caught her. He had promised he would. She was alive. The lines on her skin were retreating slowly, her system processing the final load, cell by cell, hour by hour. Valerius sat on the floor of the throne room with her in his arms and did not move to take the throne until she opened her eyes. When she did, the first thing she saw was him. Still there, exactly where he said he would be. The lower city was secured. Bryn's team had stopped the purge. The citadel was theirs. Valerius worked through the night, 12 new laws before sunrise. The 13th, Mira's condition, the full abolition of the purge, he wrote last. Not because it was least important, because he needed to be sure his hand didn't shake when he signed it. It didn't. The wolves who participated in the purge under orders were given the choice of exile or service under the new order. The High Council's core members were tried and executed, privately, without ceremony. Valerius did not enjoy it. That was the point. The Omega tunnel walls, every scratch name, were transcribed onto stone and installed in the Citadel entrance hall. Every name. Mira oversaw it personally. Colt was appointed the Empire's chief intelligence officer. The stutter he carried his whole life did not disappear. Nobody at court mentioned it twice. Sela's skin, freed from the charcoal she no longer needed, looked like anyone else's, except for faint, permanent silver branching at her wrists. The map of every time she absorbed what should have destroyed her. She considered covering them. She didn't. The coronation court assembled expecting a grand speech. Valerius walked to the center of the throne room and kneeled. In front of everyone. No speech, no declaration. Just a king on his knee in the throne room his ancestors built. In front of the court that had never seen anything like it, for a woman in a plain gray dress standing at the edge of the room. 3 full seconds. Then he rose and offered her his hand, not to lift her to the throne, but to walk with her to it. She took it. They sat together. The first joint rule in Blackwood's history. He didn't call her Lunar Queen in a proclamation. He called her by her name. That was the revolution, not the title. The name spoken by the king who once would have erased her, in a silence so complete the entire court heard it land. The Omega child from the very first night, the one he sent away with bread, walked through the doors as one of the first children enrolled in Mira's new program. Valerius saw the child, said nothing to anyone. Sela was watching his face when it happened. She took his hand under the table. He let her. "You could have made a speech," she said quietly. "They expected one." "I know," he said. "Why didn't you?" "Because I already said the important part, when I was on the floor and you were the one holding me up." The bond between them settled. Not a hook, not a survival cord, not a tether. Something that had no name in the Empire's language yet, because the Empire had never made room for it. They would have to build the word themselves. They had time now. If this story moved you, if you felt every chapter, share it with someone who needs a reminder that the people the world calls cursed are sometimes the only ones brave enough to save it. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. The next one will break you even more beautifully. She carries his poison. He carries her name. They call this a kingdom now. The end.